I'm super excited today for you to meet Dr. Terry Levy. Dr. Levy is a clinical psychologist who is a pioneer in attachment, and he works with families and kids. And attachment is a really interesting and important part of our life that most of us never think about or consider, at least not at the forefront of our minds for sure. But it has a critical component to our lives and the lives of our children. I had the good pleasure of meeting Dr. Levy many years ago, and I have followed him and stayed in touch with what he's doing, and he's doing amazing work. I want you to meet Dr. Terry Levy, the Mindful Leader. Dr. Terry Levy has been a psychotherapist, trainer, supervisor, and consultant for over 45 years. He is the director of Evergreen Psychotherapy Center and the Attachment Treatment and Training Institute in Evergreen, Colorado. Beautiful out there in Evergreen. He is a licensed clinical psychologist in Colorado and Florida, a board certified forensic examiner, and a diplomat and master therapist of the American Psychotherapy Association. He's a co-author of the bestseller book, Attachment, Trauma, and Healing. And we're going to talk about some of the stuff in this book, and I've had this for a long time. He's also the editor of the Handbook of Attachment Interventions and co-author of Healing Parents, Helping Wounded Children Learn to Trust and Love. And I've got that book. I forgot to get it out, but it's over here in my bookcase somewhere. Great book. Dr. Levy was the founder and previous director of the Family Life Center in Florida and the Miami Psychotherapy Institute, which offered family systems, treatment, and training. He was co-founder and past president of the board of directors of the Association for Training on Trauma and Attachment in Children, also known as ATTACH. It's an international organization dedicated to attachment and its critical importance to human development. Dr. Levy is a clinical member of the American, Colorado, and Florida Psychological Associations, and the American and Colorado Associations of Marriage and Family Therapy, and the American Family Therapy Academy. Woo! Dr. Levy, you are an impressive individual. I appreciate you being here with us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure, David.
You and I met each other. We didn't talk about this before when we started, but I don't know if you remember me or not, but you and I met each other many years ago through a family friend that I have, and her son was dealing with attachment issues, and you worked with him for quite a while. And then we wrote a book. His mother and I wrote a book about all that, and then we ended up not putting it out for various reasons. But you wrote the foreword to that book, and I got to meet you and Michael Orleans in San Antonio. You were doing a conference down there, and I went down just to learn more about what you do and watched it. And I was so impressed with the work you do and just had a great time meeting you and Michael. So I've been looking forward to talking to you about this very important topic.
Great. Sounds good.
So let's talk about, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. We have your kind of your formal bio, but just tell us kind of where you grew up, how you got here, how you got to doing what it is you do.
All right. Well, I've been a psychologist, if you can believe it, for over 50 years.
Wow.
I can hardly believe it.
You started out when you
It went by too fast, I'll tell you what. Got to stop and smell the flowers every day, right? Goes by fast.
That's right.
So I got my degree in clinical psychology in 1972. So really over 50 years ago. And my first interest was family therapy. I like to work with kids and parents and, the whole, what they call the family system, all the different people that make up that tribe, that clan, that community. Yeah. Because I believe that, we're so affected by our families. That's the backbone of our society, really.
Right.
And so it wasn't until years later that I started studying the human brain, neurobiology, how the brain works, and how trauma affects the human brain, and then attachment and what that does, and trauma and what that does. So over many, many years, I started putting it all together: families and the brain and trauma and attachment, and formed this Evergreen Psychotherapy Center out in Colorado. And for like 40 years now, I've been working with children and parents and families around the issues of attachment and trauma. So it's been a long journey. I've learned a lot over the years. And quite frankly, the families and the children and the parents taught me a lot by learning from them about what they need and how to help them with their problems and issues and how to find solutions. And here I am today, 50 years later.
Yeah, well, I don't think it's an overstatement. I don't know if you'd say this yourself, but I don't think it's an overstatement to say, from what I know, that you're a pioneer in this topic and in this field, especially of attachment and trauma. So
I think that's a true statement. My partner back then, my business partner, Michael Orlins, who sadly is not with us anymore. He passed away about 8 years ago. Suddenly, it was quite traumatic because I knew Michael for many years. We were actually childhood friends back in growing up in New Jersey back in the 60s. So I knew Mike. Talk about attachment. We had a friendship for many years, and then into a colleague professionally in the mental health field. So we went way back. We did start experimenting with a lot of different ways of helping traumatized children and families and parents, starting way back in the 70s and 80s. And then I moved out to Colorado. We worked together for many, many years. We wrote those books together. By the way, I might just tell you, David, just to update you, that book that you talked about, Attachment, Trauma, and Healing, the one you have is the first edition. Since then, there's a second edition that came out, published in 2014. So we usually encourage people to get the second edition because it's just up to date with everything. That's all.
Sure.
So we wrote books together. We did therapy together. We taught seminars and webinars and trained together for many years. You know, we've had a long journey together. As I said, unfortunately, Michael passed away.
Well, I'll have to update my copy of the book, but it's incredible. And I know it's used in universities and clinical environments. And it's a kind of a legendary book. So for people who don't know, when we talk about attachment, what does that mean? Tell us what attachment is.
Attachment is, on the one hand, simple. On the other hand, really complicated. The simple part is that it's basic to all of us human beings, as well as other animals and species.
Sure.
If you watch your dogs and cats with their little babies, and you watch animals out in the jungle, and lions and tigers and bears, they emotionally attach or connect with their babies. Like if out here in Colorado, if you're taking a hike and you see a mama bear with little babies, you better go the other way, because that mama bear will protect her little babies, whatever it takes. So you don't want to be threatening. It's an instinct to love, to cherish, to protect your babies. And it's the same in human beings. So that's a simple part. It's instinctive. It's been around in the human species for as long as we've been around. It's biological. It's mental. It's emotional. It's moral. It's spiritual. It's our desire, our instinct, our need to love, cherish, and protect our little children, our babies and toddlers, keep them safe, help them feel secure with us and the world, and really protect them from any bad stuff in the world. That's the simple part. The complicated part is that it affects every aspect of the human condition: our mind, our brain development, our emotions, our morality, our culture, our community. Some people say even there's a spiritual dimension to it. So that makes it rather complicated because there's all of these parts. So why am I and people like me in the mental health interested in attachment? Because sadly, there's a lot of our children in our world, around the globe, in all cultures, in all communities, uh, black and white, yellow, blue, green, cultural free, all over the world, that miss that early attachment in life. Maybe their parents um, had mental illness and they couldn't take care of them. They were unable. Maybe they were doing drugs or alcohol and couldn't take care of their babies. Maybe they were criminals. Maybe they were, whatever the thing is, they
Right.
couldn't nurture, love, protect their babies. What happens to the babies without that love, safety, security, and protection of their parents? Well, it really traumatized these kids. A lot of the families, not all, but a lot of the families we deal with who come to Evergreen, Colorado, to our clinic for our programs, actually adopted children from
Right.
foreign orphanages, from the foster care system in the US, because these children didn't have loving, safe, protective caregivers. So either they were given up and put in an orphanage or foster system, or maybe they were taken away by protective services or social workers or others who were realized these children are not safe with their parents. They're not nurtured. They're not kept safe for, again, for whatever the reason. And maybe they're put in an orphanage in Russia or the Ukraine or Brazil or Romania or wherever. Well, the good news is now they're safer. They have food, they have clothes, but they don't have parents. They're in an
Right.
institution. So it's better than not, better than living under a bridge, but it's not a loving, protective, nurturing family. And these children might stay there for 6 months, for 5 years, and then adopted by a mom and dad in Chicago or Tennessee or San Diego. Maybe they don't have the ability medically to have their own biological children. Infertility, they choose to adopt. Or maybe they have other biological children, but they feel a calling
Hmm.
spiritually or emotionally to help other children who are needy and lonely and don't have a family. So they adopt these children or out of foster care. Um, Sometimes they're not sure what they're getting into
Right.
because these children are pretty traumatized without that love and safety of a biological family. They may feel a whole lot of anxiety. They may feel a whole lot of depression. They are often angry at the world. How come I don't have a family? Doesn't anybody love me? Maybe God doesn't even love me. Maybe I'm lonely and discarded and put aside. Maybe I'm not even worth loving because a lot of children take it personally and feel like it's a comment on them. I'm a throwaway kid.
Hmm.
I'm a kid who's not worth loving. Of course, they're worth loving. All children are worth loving, but maybe they don't feel that way
Right.
because they think they're discarded, rejected, abandoned, betrayed.
Right.
So often these kids are angry. They don't trust others, especially caregivers. Can't blame them. If you were discarded and
Oh,
put in an orphanage or a foster home, and then you had 5 different foster homes, and then you were adopted, would you have a whole lot of trust in people?
right. Right.
Probably not. Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe they act out, maybe they lie, maybe they steal, maybe they run away, maybe they have problems in school because of all of these lack of attachment. So, really, is a long answer to your question. What is attachment?
It was a perfect answer, and you illustrated a lot of the things that can happen among the kids when they don't have proper attachment, for whatever reason,
Right.
whatever kind of environment they came up in. How does temperament play a role in all of this?
It does because all children are born with different genetics, different biology, and different temperaments. Well, if you have, let's say, 3 kids biologically, you'll say, oh, that's my easy one. That one was
Right.
more challenging. This one is
Yeah.
chilled out. This one is, wants a whole lot. They have different temperaments. So
Sure.
some babies are born with what's called an easy to soothe temperament. They eat,
Mhm.
they digest, they sleep, and the parents go, I'm a great parent. And I'll say,
Right.
I don't know, maybe you just have an easy kid,
Right. Right.
you lucked out.
Yeah.
Some children are born with what's called difficult to soothe temperament. Maybe they're colicky, their stomach hurts, they don't digest so well. Maybe they don't sleep so well, and they grow older and they have ADHD, attention deficit disorder, and they're
Mhm.
restless and they have a lot of anxiety and fears. Well, some of that is inborn. Some of that is temperament. So a good parent knows the temperament and tendencies and styles and needs of their different children. It's not one size fits all. You can't treat parents say, "Oh, I treat all my kids the same." I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Right. I agree.
I think
Yeah.
you have to know each child for who they are, their ups,
Yeah.
their downs, their strengths, their deficits, their whatever, their idiosyncrasies. So a good parent knows each child, and the temperament does affect each child.
Yeah. What are some other factors that affect attachment and play into all this besides temperament and maybe where they're born or what type of environment they're born into? What are some other things that impact that?
Biology and genetics. They say that biology and genetics affects all of us about 40% or more. How we are,
Hmm.
how we react. Do we have a short fuse? Are we impatient? Are we aggressive? Uh, because a lot of that is genetics. And, so a lot of the kids that we work with in therapy have a double whammy negatively. They might have really unfortunate genetics. So maybe they're adopted, but their biological parents and grandparents and family tree, maybe there was crime, maybe there was suicide, maybe there was depression, maybe there was anxiety, maybe there was child abuse, maybe there was a lot of negative stuff going on emotionally, psychologically, genetically that was passed on to them. And then they had the harsh environment on top of that,
Right.
where they were put in an orphanage or a foster care, or they were abused or they were neglected. So they have the double whammy of the negative genetics and the harsh environment. So that's really tough on these kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that family environment and how it comes into play with attachment, maybe for like with mothers, with fathers, grandparents, siblings. Tell us a little bit about that dynamic and how that all plays into attachment.
Uh, well, again, I said we work with lots of different folks. Let's just take the example of the adopted child, even though we do work with biological families without adoption, because they have a lot of these problems too. But let's
Sure.
talk about the extended family system of the adopted child. So let's say mom and dad, they're kind of nice people, they're loving people, they're kind people, and they adopt this little boy from foster care. And
Mm-hmm.
he was put into foster care when he was 6 months old because the social workers got a report from somebody, preschool or somebody or a neighbor, saying, you better go into that house. I don't think these parents are taking care of this little baby. They leave this baby alone. They have these wild parties. I think they're doing drugs. And I think this baby is in danger. So they go into the house and they go, you're not kidding. This 6-month-old baby is in danger. He's all alone. Mom and dad were doing partying, whatever. This is child neglect and child
Mm-hmm.
abuse. They
Right.
take that child out of that family and they put that little baby into a foster home. And they say to the parents, I'm sorry, but you can't have your kid back until you go to therapy and take parenting courses and stop drinking and drugging and get clean and sober. Maybe they don't.
Right.
Maybe, you know what? I don't really care because I'm not really into being a parent anyway, tell you the truth. So, whatever. And this little kid goes to one foster home. Then he's 2 years old, he's transferred into another one. And then at age 3, he goes into another one. And then at age 4, a nice mommy and daddy decide to adopt this child from Chicago. They're nice enough people,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not really aware of how challenging it might be, but they do anyway. They adopt this kid. And this kid is angry and dysregulated and bouncing off the charts and yelling and screaming and, stealing and lying and, hurting other kids in preschool. And the parents come to a therapist like us and go, I don't know what's wrong. We just want to love this child. How do we help this child? So if you're working with the family system, you can't just help the child. You have to help the parents.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to teach you to be not just any old parents. We're going to teach you to be healing parents. What is that? What's a healing parent? A healing parent is a therapeutic parent who knows how to help a child who had a really tough history, had attachment problems. He didn't attach to his parents, bounced around foster care. But before we teach you how to be healing parents, we got to know what you bring to the table. How come? Why do you have to know about our background? Isn't it enough that we're just here and we're going to help our kid? Well, that's great. But we want to know how you grew up in your family, Mom, how you grew up in your family, Dad, because we want to know what your strengths are, what your sensitivities are. Maybe when your kid gets angry, that triggers something in you. Does it, Dad? And he goes, well, to tell you the truth, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Really? What? I grew up in a family where, I hate to say it, but my dad was a really angry guy. I don't like anger.
Mm-hmm.
Freaks me out. It triggers me. Makes me nervous. Because I had anger in my family. You know what? Thanks for being honest. So when your little 4-year-old boy who you adopted, who had all these problems, gets angry and yells, not only is it hard for you because he's a little boy, but maybe it reminds you of the anger you grew up in, and you light up like a Christmas tree. What do? Dad says, I'm ashamed to say this, but I get angry back because that was my role model. Oh, so now we got to look at your background and how you were raised. So we do what's called a life script with Mom and Dad, traces their history. What did they learn growing up? What were their ups and downs? Did they have trauma? Did they have attachment issues? So I say, Mom, anything trigger you when your little boy hits you or yells at you or says, I hate you, you're a bad mommy? And Mom starts crying. What's going on, Mom? Well, to tell you the truth, when I was growing up in my family, my parents were pretty good people, and they were very religious people, and they had good values. But when I was 8 years old, they took in some foster children, and I wanted to be a good girl and love them, but they probably broke up our family. It was chaos. So yeah, when my little child yells and screams and acts out, it reminds me all of the chaos growing up in my family. These are what's called emotional triggers. And to be what's called a healing parent and help your children with problems and anxieties and depression and abandonment issues and attachment and trauma, you have to work on your own triggers. It's not enough to just know the skills of being a therapeutic parent. You have to know yourself deep down. So that's an example, David, of knowing the whole family system and how you have to work with everybody in it.
Right. Dr. Levy, what the things you're talking about as you're talking, I'm thinking, first of all, let me just say, I I've seen you operate in a workshop, and just listening to you now, I love the way you talk and the way you're so descriptive and give great examples. I just love that about you. But what you're talking about are things that every parent, in the best of circumstances, should look at and reflect on and think about. But that this issue is exacerbated when attachment's lacking.
Exactly. We wrote this book, Healing Parents, you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
how to help wounded children trust and love, because because of abuse and neglect and abandonment, they don't trust. Who would? But they also have trouble loving, giving love because maybe they didn't feel it, and accepting love because maybe they don't trust it or even think they're worthy of it. But a lot of these issues have to do with all families and
Right.
all parents and all children. And you're right, maybe it's not as extreme, but it fits for everybody. And so I know a lot of your work has to do with leadership,
Right.
healthy leadership, whether it's in work settings. You have to be a leader, you have to be a mentor, you have to be a role model, but also parents are leaders. They
Mm-hmm.
should be, at least, healthy. And so we have this thing called, I don't know, if you tell me you think it's worth it, I'll mention it, called the 10 C's of loving leadership for
Let's
parents.
hear it. Yeah, I'm all for it. Let's hear it. Yeah,
You want to hear the 10 C's
of
of
course.
loving leadership for all parents?
Yes, let's
All right,
hear it.
number one, connection. You have to find a way to connect with your children. And to connect with them, you have to be respectful of them. Respect goes both ways. Parents respect their children, children respect their parents. But like I said, you have to know them deeply. Who are they as people? Not just little robots that are supposed to listen to you, but they're human beings. What is their temperament? What is their background? What is their style? What are their strengths? What are their deficits? But you have to learn to connect. So we have a phrase: connect before you correct.
Mm.
Before you tell kids what they're doing right or wrong, look in their eyes, hold their hand, touch them with love, connect. So the first C of loving leadership is know how to connect. The second is be calm, especially if the kid's not calm. Hey, children have a lot of emotions, and they're little kids. They don't have all the executive. Their brain's not totally developed. Maybe they'll get loud. Maybe they'll yell. Maybe they'll be disrespectful. But you come in calm. You don't come in hot, because if they're having a tough time and you come with anger and aggression and loud noises, that's not going to help. So you have to learn how to be calm. We teach parents how to calm down, calm the mind, calm the body, calm the nervous system, calm the brain, calm your emotions. And kids will not be feeling threatened by you, and they'll go, okay, what do you got? I'm listening. So you got to
Right.
be able to be calm. Third
Let
C.
me let me stop. Let me stop you on that one, because I
Sure.
know there may be some people who are thinking, but my kid is such a terror. Calmness doesn't work. I have to escalate just to get their attention. What would you say to people like that?
I would say number one, thanks for being honest. I
Mm-hmm.
hear you and I understand and I get it. I've seen it myself. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's hard when the kids coming in hot and disrespectful, calling you names, threatening you. Yeah, I get that. However, over time, you're a role model and you
Mm.
don't want to engage on their level. You want them to engage on your level. So at first, it might be hard. I get that. But over time, as you're a mentor and a role model of calm, they'll come to you and learn from you. So that's what I would say.
Very good. All right,
But
number three.
yeah,
Or go
number
ahead.
three. Number three is commitment.
Mm.
You're making a moral and emotional and mental and social, and some people say spiritual commitment to love your child unconditionally. That doesn't mean you're going to like everything they do. You don't have unconditional like. Hey, kid,
Right.
I'm not too thrilled with the way you're talking to your mom right now.
Yeah.
But you have unconditional love for that
Yeah.
child as a human being. And there is a difference between unconditional love and unconditional like. Because you have
Hmm.
to say to your child sometimes, I'm not thrilled with the way you're acting right now, but
Right.
I will always love you and never leave you. But I might ground you. I
Yeah.
might give you a consequence, but I'm
Right.
always loving you. Unconditional love. It's that deep commitment.
Yeah.
Number 4, consistency. All children
Mm.
thrive and feel safe and stable and secure with a consistent, predictable environment. Don't be
Right.
changing the rules of the game every other day. Don't say yes and tomorrow say no. Yeah, you can build in some flexibility, but basically, the children know what to expect from you, from parental authority. They love predictability. The worst thing in the world for a kid is a chaotic, unpredictable, inconsistent environment. Drives them crazy. So you must have consistent rules, guidelines, expectations, boundaries, and consequences. And children feel safe with that. So that's number 4, consistency. Number 5 is healthy communication.
Mm.
If you think about it, David, the essence of attachment is communication. And like, what does that mean? Okay, a woman is pregnant, baby's growing inside of her. There's emotional communication between that mom and that unborn child. How?
Mhm.
You're sending your energy, your biochemistry, your vibes of love. You're thinking about that unborn baby. Oh, you're touching, you're rubbing your tummy. I can't wait to see you. I love you so much.
Mhm.
That's emotional communication. Your baby's
Mhm.
not even born yet. Then your baby's born and you're rocking and holding and smiling. And what's called the cues of attachment, that smile, that love on that face, that eye contact, that loving touch, that's emotional communication. And all through life, you have to know how to communicate effectively with your children and your partner, by the way, married or
Right.
unmarried, your significant other. And one of the things we do in our therapies, we teach effective communication between all family members, how to share your thoughts and emotions in a healthy way, how to listen. We say there's 2 parts to communication when you're listening: empathic, non judgmental communication. You're listening with empathy. Let me walk in your shoes for a moment.
Right.
Let me have compassion. Let me understand you. Because when you understand somebody, that's a connection. We all want to be understood. We can disagree. You don't have to be disagreeable. You can still disagree, but at least I understand you. And I decrease my judgment. I'm not judging you. I'm understanding you with compassion. So, anyway, communication is number 5. And that, to me, is the essence of a functioning family:
Yeah.
healthy communication. And we
Right.
teach it. We have a thing called attachment communication training. We teach the parents, we do it between husband and wife, dad and kid, mom and child. We just did it today with parents and a 9-year-old boy who was adopted. He
Yeah.
was in about 4 or 5 different foster homes. He was taken away. He didn't know his biological father because that guy betrayed the woman, left town, never saw him
Mm.
again. Mom was emotionally incapable, sadly had mental illness, put in foster homes. Today, for the first time, this child sat across from his adoptive father and talked to him from the heart.
Mm.
And
Mm.
dad talked to his son from the heart. Usually
Right.
they argue, they yell, they scream.
Sure.
For the first time, so communication. Number 6, choices and consequences.
Hmm.
Children need to know that there are consequences to the choices they make. And they have to learn to be accountable,
Right.
not blame somebody else. Why'd you hit your mom? Oh, dad, you made me do it. Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
You want to tell the truth? If you blame, you don't learn. If you said, I did it, my bad, I'll face the consequences and I'll do better next time, now maybe you'll learn. So children need choices and to be accountable for the consequences. Number 7, Again, the 10 C's of loving leadership. Number 7, confidence.
Mm.
If you're not confident as a parent, your children feel it. They pick up those vibes, they know it, and they're not going to trust you because you don't look like someone who can be respected and trusted. And parents say to me, I'm in a lot of trouble because I'm not confident. I don't even know what I'm doing. Thank you for being honest. By the time you leave this therapy, you're going to be really confident because we're going to show you the tools and the skills and the emotional ability and you'll self-awareness, mindfulness, know yourself, be aware in the moment without judgment, deep down, that kind of awareness of mindfulness, and you're going to be a great parent. So they get confident, and then the children respect them and trust them. Number 8, cooperation.
So
what
good.
are relationships about? Good ones. It's not selfish. Oh, this is all about me, David. I don't care about you. You sound kind of selfish to me. No, it's about reciprocity. I care about you. You care about me. I love you. You love me. I'm kind to you. You're kind back. Good relationships are always about cooperation, collaboration, and reciprocity. The problem with a lot of the kids we work with in these families is because of their attachment problems and traumas, they are so afraid in the world that they're selfish, that they're narcissistic. They weren't born that way, but they get that way because they don't trust anybody. The world's not a safe place. If you don't feel safe, you got to be in survival mode. You got to be selfish because you're always afraid.
Right.
So we get why they're afraid and selfish. It's just not working. So the therapeutic process helps the children to not be selfish and start respecting and trusting their parents. And it's a two-way street. So that's number 8, cooperation. Number 9, creativity. Healthy, safe children are creative. If you see a child who is thriving, who is loving, who feels like they are in a safe, secure family environment, that's just who kids are. Kids are amazingly creative. The things they come up with blow my mind. But when you're traumatized and scared and not connected and unsafe, you don't have the ability to be creative. You're just trying to figure out how to get through the day.
Sure.
And when the parents are struggling and anxious and depressed, they don't have the ability to thrive and be creative. So by helping the families learn to feel safe and secure, all of a sudden everybody's more creative. It's built into us.
So if I'm hearing you right on this creative one, it's not just about helping the child be creative, but it's really about the parents being creative in their approach and their process. Help me understand how it goes both ways here.
It goes both ways because when parents develop skills and tools and self-awareness to parent their children and give them what they need, not just the love, they need love and nurturance, but they also need structure and rules and boundaries. In this family I mentioned today where the dad and the kid were communicating, tomorrow the mom and the child are going to do it. But before they came to us, they didn't have the tools of parenting. So the child was running the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Children are not going to feel safe if they're running the show.
Right.
Parents are authority figures. So all of a sudden, we taught the parents to be back in that authority place of role models and mentors. No, you can't do it. Boundaries, rules, guidelines, consequence. And the child is feeling more safe now.
Right.
Because of that change in the family system and the parent-child dynamic, child feels safe, he'll become creative, he'll thrive.
So what I'm hearing you say is as the parents get better and more creative and are doing all of these C's, that helps the child increase their creativity as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All
Great.
that inner good stuff that children have that's been blocked because they're anxious and depressed and angry and frightened and insecure. It's all been blocked. All of a sudden, you're removing those barriers, and we're not putting any love and creativity into the child. It's just in there coming out. It's free to come out. It's in there.
Yeah.
We're just removing the blocks. Okay, what's number 10C of loving leadership?
I was sitting here thinking there may be some people who are thinking it's cash because you need to pour money into this or something. But tell us what actual number 10 is.
I'm not against that. We all need to live in this world, and money is certainly a reality. But no, number 10 is coaching.
Ooh, so good.
Coaching. What's loving leadership? Parents, when they get their act together, are mentors, are role models. They are coaches to their children. And not just coaches by giving advice, do this, don't do that. Sometimes that's okay. But coaches by the way they live their life. If I'm a role model and I'm not living a healthy, clean, sober life, and I'm not managing my emotions correctly, not treating my significant other with love and tenderness, and I'm doing negative stuff, what kind of role model am I to my children? No matter what I say, I'm just not living a good life. And kids see this and they feel this. So to be a healthy coach, you got to get your act together, mind, body, spirit. You got to have, you got to be a good person to be a good coach. So we teach people self-care. We teach parents how to be good role models by the way they live their life every day, the way they communicate, the way they manage their stress, the way they take care of themselves and others, the way they show up in their family, in their community, with their friends, with their colleagues. So that's a good coach, living a good life and showing your children beyond words by actions. Your role model.
Dr. Levy, this list is magnificent. And as you're talking, I'm thinking about it's obviously, as you're illustrating, applicable to the family environment and the parent relationship. But I'm thinking I'm totally going to steal this list and apply it in the workplace. And of course, I'll give you credit for it. But everything you're saying is also just good leadership. Period. But I see you've done a masterful job of illustrating that relationship, how it all works in the family model.
Yeah, well, that list, by the way, David, is in that book you have somewhere, Healing Parents, and it's totally applicable to the work environment because this is the way a good role model, mentor, coach, leader treats other people all over the place.
Right.
And this is the way others feel respect for you, admiration for you, want to work hard for you because you're doing the most important thing. You're connecting. You're connecting with people in a positive, kind, positive, loving way. You're connecting, and a good leader knows how to connect.
Absolutely. So good. Okay, Dr. Levy, that's a great list, and I think this is a great place. We do something on this show where we have a little break, and we call it the Music Minute. And this is where I feel like we get to know people better by learning about the music they enjoy. I love music, and I'm always interested in learning what music other people like. So tell us a little bit about some of the music that Dr. Levy likes. Maybe some of your favorite songs or artists or concerts you've been to, whatever. Tell us a little bit about the music that you love.
Well, as you can see, I've been around for a while on this planet. So I go way back in my music, So I love the oldies. Yeah. Okay. I love the Beatles.
Great band.
I've always loved the Beatles. Not only their music, which is unbelievable and great. And one sign of great musicians and great music is it's still relevant today.
Yeah, I agree.
50, 60 years later. But I also love their backstory.
Yeah.
They started playing music in Liverpool.
Right.
I actually went there on a trip and I took the Beatles tour.
Yeah. The Cavern Club.
Exactly. I was there. And the backstory, they started working together as musicians when they were 14, 15, 16 years old.
Right.
So, the rule about, the 10,000 hour rule,
They put it in.
they
Yeah,
put it in. They
they sure
worked for
did.
10,000 hours or more in, Liverpool, in Germany for many years before they became the Beatles, before they
Right.
were popular. And they put in hours and months and years of practice to
Yeah.
get so good. People go, oh, overnight. No overnight success. But I
Yeah.
love their music, Here Comes the Sun,
One of
you
my
know.
favorites.
So their music, to me, most of it is uplifting.
Yeah.
It's inspirational. It's positive. Of course, one of the things I study is positive psychology, not
Hmm.
just what's wrong with people, what's right.
Right.
Don't just look for what's wrong, build on the positive. And a lot of that is, how do you get inspired? Again, how do you give people positive role models? How do you go from what I call victim to overcomer? Victim, of
Right.
course, is traumatized and frightened and helpless at the end of the rope. Overcomer is not a person who's had a great life. It's a person who's had tough times and they're resilient. They bounced back.
Yeah.
And they're not great people because they've had all good times. They're great people because they've learned, no pain, no gain, how to
Yeah.
go from tough times to great times. They've worked hard. And
Yeah.
so to me, the Beatles inspire all of that: overcomer, inspiration, resilient, growth, positivity.
Yeah. It's interesting you talk about that because in my own life, I have a wide taste of music, but the older and I might say more mature I get, the more drawn I am to positive, inspiring music. And when things are really negative, I just don't want that in my brain. And so I'm much
Right,
more
right,
drawn
right.
to positive music. Yeah.
And I tell a lot of the kids who come here, I say, you know what, kid, I know you're having a tough time. I'm really sorry you had all those bad things happen to you in your life growing up. And you may not believe this, but guess what? If you want, you can really be amazing later on in your life.
Sure.
Not in spite of those things, but because you learn mind, body, and spirit how to deal with that, how to overcome it. And you're going to be an amazing, strong person. And maybe someday you'll be helping kids just like you. Give
Right.
them that message
Yeah,
of
I agree.
inspiration, of positivity, of hope.
Right.
Got to have hope.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay. Um, let's talk a little bit about trauma. Tell us what trauma is and how it occurs and just give us a little snapshot on trauma.
Well, there's different kinds of trauma. You have a car accident and,
Hmm.
you almost die and you go to the hospital, you get better, and then you're afraid to go back in the car and drive. That's trauma, you
Right.
know? You're a soldier in the army and you're in war zones and, thank God you live, but maybe some of your buddies didn't, and gives you what's called post-traumatic stress disorder. That's trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You're born and your mom can't take care of you and your dad abandons the family and you go to an orphanage or a foster home. That's trauma.
Right.
And trauma lives in, so there's all different kinds, but the similarity is that it's all the same in our brains. It
Hmm.
triggers that part of the brain in the right hemisphere, called the limbic brain, where this part lives, called the amygdala. That's the
Hmm.
center of fear. So we're living in fear because of all of our trauma. And, so it lives in our brain, in our body, somatically. People get tummy aches and headaches, gastrointestinal problems as we grow up. All kinds of trauma lives in our body. It's called psychosomatic, mind body.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
people, as they grow up, if they don't heal their traumas, they can get a lot of medical problems. As a
Right.
matter of fact, the research shows that when we're kids and we grow up, you're going to have a lot more medical problems and go to doctors and, you know,
Hmm.
maybe migraines or heart or this or that and the other because of traumas that are not healed. It lives in our emotions. It lives in our mind. It lives in our relationships. So trauma affects us on every level of the human condition: brain, mind, body, emotions, mental, relationships, beliefs, everything, morality, even. So, the good news is in this day and age, we know how to help people heal their traumas. Way back when, you were stuck, you had to just live with it. Plus, there was a stigma. I can't go to a psychologist. People will
Right.
think I'm weird. So there was a stigma. In the army back in the day, the guys would come home with PTSD. I'm not going to some shrink. People will think I'm a sissy. I'm weird.
Right.
So there was a stigma. That's sometimes, but most of that's gone nowadays.
Right.
Thank goodness. The VA helps, the vets with their traumas, and they're not afraid to go. There's no stigma anymore. It's like,
Right.
hey, I'm going to face this and heal this because I don't want to pass this on to my kids. So
Yeah.
it's great. There's less stigma. But the good news is we know how to help people with their
Right.
traumas nowadays, kids and adults.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about I guess the term may be the corrective process. When someone has attachment issues or even trauma issues, of course, the trauma causes the attachment issues, but tell us how we fix it. Maybe somebody's listening to this and they're like, wow, this is really resonating. I get everything. What do I do now? Tell us
Right.
about how to fix it.
No, that's really a great question, David. It gets down to the heart of the matter because people could say, all right, it sounds good, but people want solutions.
Right.
Don't diagnose me. I already know what's wrong with me. Okay. I can't sleep. I have anxiety. I have anger, whatever it is. What's the solution, please? And
Mm-hmm.
it's true. People want to know how to fix it. And we're really big. It's called solution oriented. We give people solutions. So
Right.
solutions are on a lot of different levels. So for example, let's say the kid has this idea was, I was put in foster care and I have this idea it's all my fault. I'm a throwaway kid. Nobody loves me. Nobody's ever going to love me. That's what's called a narrative in the
Mm-hmm.
brain, in the mind, self-talk. Here's what I'm thinking. So you can't just say to the child, oh, come on, that's ridiculous. Don't think that way. They'll say, easy for you to say. How do I
Yeah.
change my thoughts?
Yeah.
But there's a way to do what's called cognitive rescripting, change that narrative. And we do what's called experiential, create
Mm-hmm.
healing experiences. So I don't know if I want to get into all the details, but let's say we give that little kid a teddy bear.
Yeah.
And we say to the child, see this teddy bear? Let's pretend, use your imagination. Kids have great imagination. Pretend this little teddy bear you're holding is you when you're a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
And this little boy is thinking, nobody loves me. I'm in a foster home. I'm not worth loving. It's all my fault. I'm filled with shame. What do you want to say to that little boy? This is your inner child. So the 10-year-old says to the little teddy bear, you know what, kid? That wasn't your fault that your mom couldn't take care of you and your dad left town and you ended up in an orphanage. You think it was your fault. Little
Mm-hmm.
kid, I'm telling you, you are a gift from God like all children. You are worth loving. So
Mm-hmm.
now it's not the parent or the therapist trying to tell the kid to change their thoughts. The child is telling the inner child.
Right.
And you say, wow, that's a beautiful thing you're saying to that little boy. You know what? He needs a hug. Can you hold him on your heart? Can
Mm-hmm.
he feel your love? Sure. And that little boy holds that teddy bear and says, I love you, little kid, because you know what? I'm you and you're me. And you're
Yeah.
going to grow up to be me someday. And I'm giving you my love. And you're worth loving. That's a corrective emotional experience. That's telling that little baby you're worth something. It's changing the thoughts of the child from negative to positive. And it's corrective because the child's feeling love, not
Mm-hmm.
hate. I love me. I'm worth something. As a little example. I know that's out of
Yeah.
nowhere, but that's a little example.
No, that's wonderful. And I know there's so much more to what you're talking about, but when I met you in San Antonio at that workshop that I went to, you've done thousands, I'm sure you don't remember it, but you were teaching this process to other clinicians, and
Right. That's right.
you showed videos of this process, and it was one of the most powerful things I ever watched. If people are listening, I want people to know that, because if people are listening to this and they think, I don't know, that sounds a little pie in the sky. No, this stuff works, and it's very powerful. And I got to watch you train other clinicians in this, and it was remarkable, absolutely remarkable.
Well, I'm glad you did observe that because you have more understanding. And a lot of people say that sounds kind of weird, or who does that kind of thing? But it actually
Yeah,
does work. And one
yeah,
of the reasons it works from a scientific or neurobiological standpoint is because the brain is what's called a social brain. So little children learn, and the brain is programmed by things that happen to them with mommies and daddies and teachers and other caregivers. And so the point I'm making is the brain can change that programming by healthy, positive experiences later in life. So you can actually rewire the traumatized brain by positive, loving, corrective experiences. It rewires that brain. Our
right.
brain is social in nature. That's why.
Yeah, yeah, so good. Dr. Levy, I feel like you answered this with a lot of the 10 C's that you gave us and some of the other things you've talked about. But what else would you say to someone who's parenting a child with attachment issues? Or maybe they're in a relationship with an adult that never uh, got that resolved for them. What would you say to people who are, what else, I guess, would you say to people who are involved in this?
I believe the number one thing that parent needs to do is truly deep down know themselves,
Hmm.
mind, body, emotion, spirit, holistically, self awareness. Know what you bring to the table from your background and your past, your environment, your ups and downs, your biology, your genetics, because you don't want to unconsciously, without realizing it, get triggered and
Right,
overreact to your child, either by being angry or aggressive or punitive or frightened or rejecting and pull away, because self awareness will help you be the kind of great parent you want to be for your child. So that's number one, know yourself. And the second thing is, I'm not, saying you have to read the book I wrote with Michael, Healing Parents, but get some kind of help or guidance or education or advice about really know what your child has gone through and how it affected their mind, their brain, their emotions, their relationships, their perceptions, their core beliefs, their narratives. So you got to, number two, really deep down know your child. So know yourself and know your child. And
yeah,
never give up. Never give up.
yeah,
I can't tell you how many success stories I've seen with people. I'll just share something personally.
sure.
I have three children. They're all grown now with their own kids. I'm a grandpa, whatever.
Yeah.
But two of my children, my boys, are biological. My sons, I have an adopted daughter.
Hmm.
And so I know what it's like
Yeah.
because she had trauma before I adopted her. She didn't trust me for a long, long time
Mhm.
because of her own traumas.
Right.
And then she did trust me.
Mm. Yeah.
Took a long time, but my mantra was, I'm here forever. I ain't going nowhere.
Right. Right.
I trust that someday
Yeah.
this thing's going to work. And down the road, when she started trusting me, she never looked back. And we have a great relationship for
Right.
decades now.
Right.
So don't ever give up, but know yourself, get the help you need, get the support, get the information and education. That's what I would say.
So good. I have one big question and then one small question because I know we're out of time. But talk a little bit about where we are, particularly in America, with regard to public policy and funding on all of this? Because I'm sure you have some thoughts on that.
I was just talking to some people this morning about this. We were talking about the foster care system. And I don't want to speak negatively about any individual person, but systemically, policy wise, um, we do not give enough money,
Right.
support, training to the foster parents who are in the trenches working hard job with tough kids who have a lot of trauma. It's the hardest job in the world. And a lot of these people, these foster parents, are salt to the earth. They're
Mm-hmm.
certainly not doing it for the money, I'll tell you that much.
Right. Right.
But we need to put more emphasis on education, school system, foster care system, social welfare system, because these are the children and they're going to grow up and take over someday. It's the
Right.
next generation. So a lot of the people are great, but on a policy, systemic level, we really need to do a better job.
Yeah. Severely, severely need to do a better job.
Right.
Dr. Levy, I am so grateful for you coming on today and sharing your vast wealth of knowledge with us. How do people get in touch with you if they want to connect with you, if they want to get in connect with Evergreen? How do people get in
Yeah,
touch with
well,
you?
of course, we have a website like everybody else, www.evergreenpsychotherapycenter.com. Read all about our trainings, our videos, our therapy, our resources. We got tons of resources on there, all kinds of training information and blogs and, LinkedIn, whatever. So I probably have, I don't know, 75 to 100 different brief videos of teaching different things. It's all on there. And my email address is on there. Anybody can email me. I love to hear from folks, whether they're parents, whether they're mental health professionals, social service workers, whoever.
Yeah.
And all about the training. I'm still doing a lot of webinars.
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, before COVID, I'd show up in person, like that
Sure.
day you saw me and Michael teach. Now, of course, went to webinars.
Yeah, right, right.
Zoom.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This book,
Get the
next
new one.
edition,
Get the
second
new
edition,
version.
Attachment, Trauma, and Healing. And absolutely get the book, Healing Parents. People will not be disappointed in either one of those. Dr. Levy, thank you so much for your time.
You are welcome, and thank you for inviting me, and thank you for all the great things you do. Appreciate you. And I hope to see you again one of these days.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I just love Dr. Terry Levy, and I'm sure you did as well. Be sure to connect with Dr. Levy on LinkedIn. You can learn more about him and his organization at evergreenpsychotherapycenter.com. And be sure to check out his book, Attachment, Trauma, and Healing. Get the latest edition. I have an early edition because I met him years ago. And then his other books also. Be sure to check him out. I know it will be a tremendous benefit to you and others. So, we're going to do a meditation here in just a moment. Before we do, I'd like to ask you to do us a favor. Go out and rate and review the Mindful Leader podcast wherever you listen. And that just helps people get to know us and that it's a good show and you're enjoying it. And so that's a real benefit to us. And we appreciate you doing that. You can also visit us at our website, pendulumcoaching.com. It's been revamped and renewed and has lots of great information there, so you can check that out. While you're there, you can sign up for our weekly email newsletter. We send out a short email each month or each week, and I think you'll enjoy that. We also do monthly have an article that I write on LinkedIn, so you can subscribe to that also there at the website. Also, be happy to come and work with you in your organization any way you need, keynotes, workshops, coaching, all kinds of things that we can do to help you through leadership, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, any of those things we are happy to help you with. Be sure to tell your friends about us. But right now, I'd like us to have a moment of meditation. So if you would, just if you're driving, of course, be careful and be safe. Otherwise, you can, if you're sitting like I am, you can just place your feet on the ground, just really feel them grounded. You can sit up straight, supporting yourself. You can place your hands in your lap. You can close your eyes if that feels comfortable. If you're in another position, that's fine. Just be comfortable and alert. I like to transition us into our meditation time with a few breaths together. Let's just inhale and exhale and inhale, exhale. One more time, inhale and exhale. You can just continue to breathe normally now. One of the 10 C's that Dr. Levy shared with us applies to parenting, leadership, relationships, all of those things. And that is this C of coaching. I found it very interesting, helpful, and useful that especially to our children and to those who we lead and interact with, that coaching is an important component. A huge part of that is being a role model, being someone who doesn't just tell people what to do, but someone who lives out the ideals that they talk about. I want us to reflect on a few of those. Thinking about your mind, your body, and your spirit. How are you a role model to others as you coach others and then live it out before them? With regards to your self care, what do you do to take care of yourself? And as other people, maybe your children, your peers, your coworkers, your team members, what do they see in you as you caring for yourself? How do you do that mentally, physically, spiritually? All of those things. Consider how you take care of yourself, which can be seen as a role model for others. Now consider how you coach others and are a role model to others in areas of communication. How do you speak to others? How do you listen to others? What are people learning from you through your communication behavior? Consider that for a moment. Now let's think about how we treat others as we coach people and are a role model for others. What do they see in us in the way we behave with other people, how we interact with them, how we treat them with trust, respect, integrity, kindness, empathy, love? If everyone acted like us, how would the world be? If our children grow up to behave the same way we do, would we be proud of them? We want our employees and team members to act the same way we do. Think about how you treat others and how you're modeling that for those around you. Let's breathe together. Let's inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. One more time. Inhale and exhale. You can close your eyes if you like. I appreciate you spending time with us today. I appreciate Dr. Levy and his valuable time, wisdom, and guidance with us today. Be sure to connect with him. Tell him you heard him on the Mindful Leader podcast. Tell all of your friends about us, and we will see you next season on The Mindful Leader.